Restaurant Unstoppable, episode 715 with the Joe Fontana. And with excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest back on the show for a second time. And I couldn't be more proud of this dude, Joe Fontana. My man, Joe, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Always, Eric. Unstoppable.
Yes. So a product of Chicago, Illinois, Joe Fontana gave up his cush office lifestyle to pursue his passion for hospitality and food. At the time, the specific passion was meatballs. So he started where he could, selling meatballs at farmers markets, which led to a Kickstarter campaign to support his brick and mortar. The meatball thing did not work out, but it created opportunities, specifically an opportunity for Fry The Coop. When you were on the show the first time, almost 2.5 years ago, that was episode 425. You were 2 months into your project when you first came on the show. That was 2.5 years ago. You're at 4 locations now with 2 opening. So we have a lot to cover. Dude, we're going to be basically picking up the conversation. So I highly encourage you right now, head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/425. And if you have not listened to that conversation, get caught up. In that conversation, we talk a lot about what the path you took, Joe, is what I would tell anybody to do. If you have an idea, just start where you can. You don't have to aim for the brick and mortar out of the gate. Start where you can. Proof of concept, pop-ups, farmers markets, get feedback. Evolve, pivot. We talked a little bit about Kickstarters, the reality of these Kickstarter campaigns. How you didn't get. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it helped you get your mission out into the universe, which brought you opportunity. And it's a really great interview. So restaurantunstoppable.com/425 to get caught up. And now let's pick it up where we left off. So 2.5 years ago, you're at 2.5 locations. Paint that picture of what it was like reflecting back at that time.
Well, at that time, I was very confident that we were...
Success quarter mantra.
I was going to cut you off. But...
Go for it. Get it started.
You know, and I'm going to stick with the same mantra, which is small daily improvements eventually lead to huge advancements.
Yes, dude. I love it. That's
I know you know that one.
Yeah, and you kind of talked about why that resonated with you before in the first episode, but just again, real quick, why does that resonate with you?
Yeah, and I think it's just you got to keep the ball rolling every single day. You know, do not stop improving your business, yourself, your family, your life. I mean, you just kind of keep the ball rolling. We all have the same amount of time to work with. You only have, you know, day by day. So it's kind of like, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. But I think when you're constantly improving, you're moving forward. You're having progress. You're growing. You have something to hope for. You know, and I think that's so important in life in general.
Yes, man. Great way to get this thing started. And so I remember like when you just started, one of your biggest challenges, and this came from the first interview, was you're a huge culture dude. And I remember like you had this vision for your culture and this vibe that you wanted to create. And one of your biggest challenges was maintaining that vision that you had for culture. While bringing all these new personalities on and still trying to really find your own personality, your own identity in your new restaurant. So how did that go? Take us to that point.
So it's hard I guess I should say it's easier when you're in the building, you know, every single day. And when we had one location, I was there 7 days a week, you know, lunch and dinner, you know, you're there all day long. So now reflecting back, I think it's easy to mold the culture the way you want it when you're there, you know, and if something's getting out of line, you know, you can pull people aside, talk to them, you can have group meetings, you can kind of influence everybody. They get to know you and your personality and your ideology. And, you know, so I think like, I didn't realize how much of a blessing that is to be in, you know, your one location and being inside one building with everybody. Now we have 100 people, 4 locations, and we're all in different buildings. You know, we're not in the same building every day. So that's been a really big challenge, is to mimic the culture, you know, at different locations. And I've learned that each location has a different culture. So even though it's the same, you know, company, the same logo, the same recipes, the same procedures, the same training, I mean, each restaurant for sure has its own culture. And I think, you know, understanding that part and working in those parameters has really helped me, you know, kind of mold that culture from a distance. But I'm still learning. It's something that
I think we'll probably come back to that as the story kind of unfolds, as we get caught up to, you know, getting into that fourth location. But going back to that first location, you said that there was, you know, a bunch of different personalities and trying to get those personalities to align to the culture you wanted. Did you ever achieve that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
Well,
one of the things that we,
go ahead.
well, I think so. We encouraged a lot of our staff at the time to invite their friends to work there. So we kept pushing that, you know, hey, who are your friends? Get your buddies involved, you know? So, and that kind of bit us in the ass later on, but there was moments where there was a huge group of friends all working. They were having a ton of fun. They were kicking butt, you know, and that, like, that to me was such a great, I always think it's so important to have fun at work. I think that's the foundation for our culture, is like, if you're working your butt off, you're hustling, you're laughing, you're joking around with everybody, you're having fun. I just think it makes for such a great work day. And so that was really important to me. And though there was plenty of moments where people were just laughing and having fun and excited to come to work. So we definitely achieved a great culture, but it's always evolving, you know?
So
And
what changed when you said because again, when we were talking the last time, you said one of your biggest challenges was getting the culture aligned. So you had the people that you liked invite their friends. So birds of the feather flock together. Maybe that had something to do with it. But what things did you do to get the culture to where, specifically, what was the change you made to get the culture in that single first location to where you wanted it to be?
I think drilling in the minds of everybody. Well, first we had to figure it out. So there was a lot of us trying things out that worked or didn't work, and us pivoting and, you know, doing, you know, us understanding ourselves. So that was a lot of, like, you know, figuring out who we are, what we stand for, what we believe in, and really kind of like flushing that out. You know, because when you start a company, you don't have everything figured out on day one, you know, and it takes time. I mean, we're still kind of figuring that out, but I think, you know, the more you focus on it, the more you kind of learn about yourself and about everything. So I think that was a big part of it. But then also, once we kind of had a better grasp on who we are and what we wanted to accomplish, I think it was getting that inside the minds of everyone who worked there and really, like, telling them what we wanted and, you know, what our goals were. It's kind of like
Inside the minds of people, break that down. What does that look like? Is it just repetition? Is there rituals? What were you doing?
so one thing that we kind of took away from the Marines is they have all these, like, little quotes, you know, that you know, that help you remember certain things. I guess one stupid one that comes to mind is the Ray Kroc one. But if you have time to lean, you have time to clean. You know, things like that are like these analogies and little, like, quotes that resonate with you and they stick in your mind, you know? So I think, you know, for us, we kept drilling in everybody that we want, you know, great service, great food, and great cleanliness. And so, you know, we kind of drilled that in the minds of everybody. And, you know, it was just breaking down, because you can write for days, paragraphs and paragraphs about, you know, what you want and what you want out of a culture. But I think coming up with very quick slogans and phrases really help out to kind of get people to really wrap their heads around what your goals are. And it's kind of like, you know, your people can't hit a strike if they can't see the pins, you know, so you have to show them where the pins are at.
Pictures.
That's a 1 minute manager.
Yeah, man.
There.
So a bunch of great things that come out of this. Obviously, you got to paint that picture of perfection. You got to give people an aiming point, or else they don't know. They're just showing up. They need to have an aiming point. It's so important. Also, listening to you talk, I can't help but think of Mario Del Piero and his advice when he was talking about culture. If you look at cultures across the history of humanity, every culture has its own language and rituals, right? and those languages and those rituals are unique to the culture. In rituals specifically, you have to repeat things. You have to like, you need a rhythm of like reminding people of who we are and what we're about. And then the language, certain cultures have language. And that's what you're saying. We have these sayings, like you have time to lean, you have time to clean. And these things and these rituals become a part, and it's like battering your people over the head with who we are and what we're all about. But we need it for hardwiring. We need it. It sounds like that's kind of what was going on in your situation. Safe to say?
Yeah, safe to say. And thank you for thinking of Mario. He's a hero of mine. So
I got the show a second time, right?
Yes, yeah. I listened to it. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So so we talked about you just kind of battering people over the head with these mantras, these sayings, these rituals, and you also mentioned, and I kind of want to pull back the layers on this, and it was real quick that you had the people that you hired reach out to their friends and recruit their friends. And for a while you had this tight knit group of people humming along, but it bit you in the ass. How did that bite you in the ass?
Well, it became too much. So out of our 30 employees at that location, I think maybe 20 of them were all high school boys who all were like a great group of friends, together. And so when you have that many people that are friends, I think what started happening was they started kind of like banding together to kind of like go against the restaurant, in a way, kind of like screw the man in a way, and it started getting out of control for us with them because, they're boys, they're high school, they were seniors, juniors and seniors. Some of them were graduating, going on to college. And at that time, like, for example, we found out in the morning through Snapchat that these knuckleheads decided to have a fight club after work one day. So they closed the restaurant. I can't even make this up. They literally closed the restaurant, and there's cameras everywhere. So I don't know what these guys were thinking, but they literally moved all the tables in the dining room. They brought in boxing gloves, and they literally had a fight club till like 2 a.m. at the restaurant. So from 11 when they closed for 3 hours, they were brawling each other inside the dining room. And like, we couldn't even believe it. Literally couldn't believe that these knuckleheads
Go down before you guys picked up on it.
What'd you say?
How many times did this go down before you realized? How many sessions were there?
Good question. I think only one, because also these idiots put it on Snapchat. That's how we found out. So they're all filming it, on their social media. And, it literally wasn't even 6 hours before I got a call that, hey, you're not going to believe what happened last night. So that was kind of one of the turning points, like, hey, all right, we got to break up this friendship because this is not working out,
A situation like that, how did you address it?
Well, we had to fire 2 of them. We fired the 2 people who we found out who instigated the whole facility, and we let them go. And then that kind of was like a little bit of an example. But there was some people that were like sour that we fired them. And, and then one by one, we just ended up having to let go of, these guys. Only out of the 20, I think there's 2 of the friends that still work at the restaurant,
So, I mean, some things to consider when you hire a group of friends, you're creating the opportunity for there to be kind of a bubble, like a little bit of a clique. And if there's a special event, a dance, or like like people want to go places, you're going to have like 5 or 6 people all at once looking for time off. Like, I can see how that could like be kind of an issue. I mean, it's good for like, I guess, culture, like if you want like a close knit people, a group of people, but there are some pros and cons to that approach. So earlier I asked you to kind of paint that picture for the listeners. 2018, the turn of 2018, you were 2 months in the last time you were on the show. We kind of painted your biggest challenge and how you overcame that, but what else was going on in your business? Paint that picture.
Well, I think we just opened. Basically, we opened up without a sign. We didn't have enough money for it yet. We didn't really have anything figured out. So there was no customers coming in too. So it was the other part that people were kind of flowing in slowly but surely. And I always knew about publicists and PR being very powerful for restaurants. I learned it from a lot of New York guys, you know, because there's so many restaurants in New York that they have to kind of cut through the noise and kind of stand out. So I talked to one of my friends, and they have a very successful restaurant. It's a Michelin-starred, or 2-star Michelin restaurant in Chicago. And I was going through and I'm asking him like, hey, so like, you know, you guys only been open up a year and you're already up for a Michelin star. Now they have 2, but at the time I think they just got their first, or they were nominated. And I was like, wow, how are you guys so successful? Like, you know what I mean? And I thought he was going to say, oh, it's our, you know, our chef is amazing and he cooks the best food, or our customer service, you know, or, you know, I thought he was going to name off all these obvious things. And he goes, oh, it's our publicist, our PR. I was like, wait, what? Your PR?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm confused. And so he's like, honestly, we get mentioned, you know, 30 times a month in different magazines, newspapers, you know, on TV. And he's like, honestly, that keeps people coming in.
So you're 2 months. Did you bring a publicist on at that 2-month point?
I brought her on at 3 months. So
okay.
3 months into it, yeah.
You were on the show. So real quick before we
right after
the power of that publicist and having that, you mentioned something as a teaser. And if you knuckleheads did not listen to our advice to go back to episode 425 and kind of get caught up, you get into the benefits of doing a below the radar opening and the benefits of that. So you're not getting slammed on day one, and how that serves.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just a teaser. We don't need to unpackage that again today. But when did you start to actually let people know that you were open and start promoting this thing? Was that like after a month you were on the show and you got the publicist basically?
Yeah. So I would say it was about 3 to 6 months in is when we started using the power of the publicist to, you know, really kind of get us rocking and rolling. And that was a game changer. And that's a good point you bring up. I mean, I still believe in opening very slowly. We just did it in November with our 4th location. It's painful, but we opened up for just dinner. So we opened up from 5 to 9, I think, you know, 5 days a week. So what was nice about that is that we had 25 people start with us. So all 25 people worked those same 5 shifts. You know, we are all together. And then that way you kind of get everybody on the same page. We did it for a month. And then from there, we added in lunch and dinner 5 days a week, you know, so then we split up the team. And then, you know, half the people started working lunch, half the people started working dinner. Then once, you know, that was kind of solidified and those key people knew what they were doing, we kept hiring. We, you know, opened up for a 6th day, then we were open up 6 days a week. And then eventually after almost, you know, a month and a half, we were open up, maybe 2 months, we were open up for 7 days a week. So I like that, even though it's very painful, like you want all that cash flow and revenue because you're in debt.
Labor expenses are high and you're only open during limited hours. So you don't have a ton of cash flow. So you're kind of taking an initial hit, but no pain, no gain. What's the gain from that?
I think if you're going to open up a restaurant that's going to be there for 30 years, 100 years, you know, I think you have to start with a really solid foundation. So if you try to jump into it, you know, as we all know, you only get one shot with a customer at the restaurant business. And so you really want to flush out every little cork and kink before you go full bore. And some of these restaurants, I don't understand it. Day one, they're shouting on the rooftops, "Oh, grand opening, everybody come." That there's no way it's going to be a good experience. And if somebody shows up, they're going to try it one time. They're going to say, that wasn't that good. I'm not going back. Yeah. But if you have 2 months of training, real training, where you're serving customers and getting their feedback and really working out everything before you have the masses start coming in the door, you know, you've already worked out all those kinks. You know what works, you know, who works out, who doesn't on the team, you know, you kind of figure all that stuff out. And then I feel like you're ready. You'll know when you're ready to kind of shout from the rooftops, like, "Hey, we're open. Come see us."
Yeah. And I think just the being able to, like, it's the difference between having one person trickle through the door slowly, you know, consistently versus having a line around the block is you get to, "Hey, what's your name? How long have you been? Are you new to town? We're new to town, clearly." Like, and you get to, like, start a dialogue with that person and get to know that person and, like, make an impact on that person instead of just like, "All right, here's your order. Like, get out of line so I can serve the next person," which is just, you know, I just feel like there's got to be something just to that, being able to have a person experience.
huge. And if you have 5 tickets on the board, it's easy to take your time and make every meal really great. If you have 400 tickets on the board, it's like, how do you're rushing, you're slammed, people are waiting long times. So I really feel like, kind of what you said, you get to really care for each person, each meal individually in a nice, slow pace, and that really helps kind of get the practice going for when you are busy.
I'm curious. I know that you have partners in this, and they're partners within the retail space, right? So you partnered with what's the word? Developer, right?
It's a real estate. I have one partner. He's an investor, and he is a real estate guy. So that's the reason we have 4 locations, is because of his reach into real estate. So we kind of knew that we wanted to grow the company from the beginning. So with his network, his reach into real estate, that's the secret of us growing our business, is his grasp on that.
So you said he's also an investor. So he's injecting cash flow into the business, and he's also got the network with the real estate. But would you have been able to have this slow opening of high labor expense, low cash flow, low amount of money coming in if you didn't have this investor behind you? Was he giving you pools of cash to kind of stay fluid? Was that part of the reason why you're able to open slow, or is it just, was there another variables?
No, no, not really. I mean, he's not sitting on, and he's not sitting on like a pile of cash where he's just like, oh, Joe, let me write you a check. What do you need? I mean, everything's very strategic, and we go on a shoestring budget. So we drained all of our cash. I mean, literally, we dedicated some startup operating cash, but it was really painful. I mean, opening up slow, you go through so much money, and we're still in debt from location number 4 because we're crawling out of all of our debt startup expenses. So yeah, it wasn't like we had a ton of extra cash. Like, it's not like I had like, oh, here's $60,000 to run 2 months of labor. Like, that wasn't the case at all. So
how did you find this balance of being able to have such a high labor expense? You have 25 people working at once to make a very small menu, right? It's not like you have a massive menu. You need a ton of people in the kitchen. You guys are doing fried chicken sandwiches, and you have a couple sides, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's like a very in and out menu, if you will.
So how did you, what advice do you have for somebody who is taking this approach of slow, under the radar opening, 25 people on staff at once, only open at night? How did you manage those costs? How did you make that happen? Any little bit of advice before we start moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just have to be really conscious about labor expenses during that time. So even though you are training, you have to cut people, you have to say, okay, they were here for a couple hours, we're going to cut them now. You really have to be conscious of all the expenses going out. What's nice about being open during that slow opening is, you do have some cash coming in. So it's not a lot, but, you have orders coming in. So people are coming in to grab food. So, I mean, there is some cash flow, and you kind of have to work with that, so you just stretch that as far as you can. I mean, we came out on the other side of it with $0. I mean, I remember our bank account had like $3,000 total in it at the end of the 2 months. And I was like thinking like, oh man, we're in big trouble here, but thankfully it started picking up, and we kind of are building back now, our slow growth. But yeah, I think it's just being conscious, like you don't want to dedicate a ton of money to that, but you definitely want to be smart about it.
I know you brought on a partner, or I don't know if it was necessarily an equity partner. My memory is a little foggy, but you brought somebody on who was strong where you were weak, and that was back of house operations.
Yep.
Person still with you?
Oh yeah. Yep. His name's Francisco Morales. He started out as our head chef, and now he's kind of moved into a culinary director, but he's also a director of operations now.
Okay. And at what point did you bring him on your team as far to help set up my timeline?
Day one. He was our first hire.
Okay. I'm interested in when you brought him on, did you bring him on as partner or as like, what was that relationship? I mean, without getting into too much detail, I don't want to, you know, intrude on his privacy, but.
No, oh yeah, no, he was just hired as an employee of the company, if you will, and now he's literally like the boss of the company. But he came on, and you know, his salary was way more than I expected to pay at the beginning. And at one point, I actually literally had to take my car over to a title company, and I gave them my title, and they borrowed me $2,000 against my car so I could cover his salary in the first, like, you know, I think it wasn't the first round of payroll, but it was the second round. I had to leverage my car to get him paid. But that sacrifice paid off in spades, because, you know, he is a true leader in our company. And I mean, he is basically, like I kind of mentioned, he's the boss of the company. He's a huge reason why we're so successful. And he had all the skills that I didn't have in the back of the house, from an operations standpoint, from you know, commercial kitchen. Like, I could come to your house and cook you a great meal at your home table, but being a home cook like I am is very different than being a professional chef, knowing how to do things consistently on a commercial scale. So that's where.
Yeah, awesome. I think now is a good time to start transitioning into this idea of investing early on in a publicist. First and foremost, I mean, how did you even justify? What's the cost? Like, what did it cost you to have this publicist early on? I'm curious.
So to start, it was $2,500 a month.
Okay,
which is a lot.
Yeah, especially early.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of extra. I mean, I'm sure that came out of like your earnings, potential earnings. Did it not, or did you budget for it?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, we didn't have any money. I just knew that, you know, that could project us to, you know, the goal of any restaurant is to become a staple, right? But in order to be a staple, you have to be around in the neighborhood for a long time, 20 years, 30 years, you know. It's definitely a huge goal, I think, for every restaurant, is to become a staple in their neighborhood. But I just thought, if we can get on TV, I thought that could really, you know, project us into this staple status a lot quicker than, you know, 20, 30 years kind of thing. So that was my thought behind it. I also don't believe still to this day in traditional marketing. So like sending out mailers and.
So direct mail marketing?
Yeah, direct mail, even coupons. I'm very against coupons. We get pitched all the time about, oh, you need coupons for this, or do you want to do a coupon? I don't like coupons. I feel like it just cheapens your brand. I know they work, so I'm not really like, you know, I don't want to come down on them too hard.
A lot of people who believe that, yes, you might see an initial flow of people because of these coupons, and you see more heads in your restaurant, but are they the right heads? Are they the kind of people that are going to show loyalty to you, or are they the cheap mother effers that just want a discounted meal and have no loyalty?
Yeah, exactly.
The discount shoppers, right? And you don't want that kind of business.
Well, and one thing I learned from our mutual friend, which I think he learned from his restaurant consultant, was a quote. And the quote goes, "Marketing creates trial and operations create sales." So it took me a long time to wrap my head around that. Marketing creates trial, operations create sales. And really, like, your operations have to be locked, stock, and smoking barrels. I mean, they need to be so tight. And that's what will bring people back into your restaurant. You know, if they have a great experience, they come in, the customer service is great, the food's great, you know, they come back, the food's the same, you know, there's consistency there, the bathrooms are clean, the customer service is still great. You know, if those operations are rolling smoothly, then you'll get repeat customers. But marketing just creates trial. So before you hire a publicist or a PR rep, you know, you better have your operations ready to rock and roll, and you better have a great product. Because, you know, marketing, PR, it could, you know, it's great. It will create that trial where people will come in and give you a try, but it's the operations that will keep people coming back in over and over and over again.
Just like, again, we're like down at surface level to zoom back up to 20,000 feet, which is why it's so important for you the first couple of weeks or months to get those systems, to get that culture, to get the training down. So people, when you do have the masses coming, you're locked in. You know, you're everyone's aligned with what the job done right looks like, and we've had practice, so you can knock it out of the park. When you do invest capital into driving people into your restaurant, your people will be prepared. So $2,500 a month, you hire this publicist. What does she start doing? Like, what are the first things that she starts doing when she has her, when the contract's been signed, she's working for you? What does it look like?
So, and we, just to backtrack a little bit, we interviewed about 5 publicists before we found the one that we thought was a great fit for us, because a publicist, what'd you say?
Why was she a great fit?
I think she was a great fit because of her relationships that she had with the different networks, specifically TV. So that was one thing we really wanted to focus on, is getting ourselves onto TV, local Chicago television. And we thought that we wanted a publicist that had great relationships, had a great track record of, getting people on TV, getting their clients on TV, and we're still in that process, because the big goal was to kind of go on national TV. So, but, as a stepping stone point, you have to start with local, and then you can kind of move to national. Nice. So that was a big key.
Okay. So you started saying something when you interviewed 5 publicists, and then this publicist that I interrupted your train of thought. Can you pick it back up?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we identified the girl that we wanted to work with, she got us on TV right away. So we went on a show called Windy City Live. Windy City Live. Yeah, it's the show that replaced Oprah. So when Oprah retired on ABC 7, they were the slot. That was the show that took over Oprah's spot. It's live TV, and we went on, did a segment, like a heat challenge, and literally, no joke, I mean, it was 5 minutes long, it lasted. The second it ended, our phone started ringing. And before you know it, the next day we had our busiest day to date. We had a line out the door. Then one of the biggest food critics in Chicago, this guy named Steve Dolinsky, he's also on ABC 7, and he has a segment called Hungry Hound. He goes around and tries a lot of the new places, but it's really hard to make his cut. And sure enough, she reaches out to him. He goes, yeah, maybe I'll stop by. And it's all a gamble too. Nothing's guaranteed at all with this. She said she bugged him about one of her clients for 3 years, and he still has never tried the restaurant. So she gives him a call. 2 weeks later, all of a sudden he shows up in our restaurant, and actually had a bad experience. It was crushing. I get an email from him saying, the sandwich was partly dry. He said the fries were good, but half the sandwich was great. The other half was not good. We have a lot of work to do. I mean, he just tore us a new one. I was devastated. And literally I was on a call with her saying can we bring food to his office? Can we see if we get another shot, And literally in the middle of that conversation, she gets an email saying, hey, it's Steve Dolinsky. I want to go to Fry The Coop and shoot a segment. Are they free on Thursday? And so, out of nowhere, he wanted to, shoot something with us. So next thing you know, about a month later, we get on the Hungry Hound, and that aired twice that weekend. And I'm not kidding you, a line formed around our building. We were so busy. We sold out of chicken 5 days, or 5 different occasions, different days in about a 2-week span after that aired, that we were just running out. I had to we went from 10 employees to 25, literally almost overnight. We had to hire 15 people after we aired. And then from there, it just kind of spirals. Then we got on a show called Chicago's Best, which is kind of like diners, drive-ins, and dives a little bit, but for the Chicago area. It's on WGN. We went on WGN, did a national segment. They do a lunch break, their national news. We got on that. We got written up in the Chicago Tribune, featured in the Chicago Sun-Times. It just
behind all these opportunities.
100%. Yeah.
So is it safe to say you recouped your $2,500 a month on her being a part of your team?
If you're talking about return on investment, which I hate those corporate terms, but yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I don't know where we would be without all that media, attention. And it's a third party unbiased attention too. So, it's really, the publicist is just reaching out on your behalf. to say, hey, come check out my client, they're doing this or that. And there's no guarantee that journalist is going to come out.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work to be constantly, you guys can do this yourself. If you're listening to this, I mean, it's not easy. It's going to be that thing after a 12-hour day, after you've gone home, or, after even a 14-hour day and you're exhausted. Just make it an effort to like email one person, get home, have one person, make a list of like the top 10 people or the top 10 resources you want to be of, and just slowly just start reaching out to people. And it helps to have somebody who has these relationships already established, for sure. And that's one thing that you can just automate, and you're probably going to expedite the process. But if you don't have the budget for the publicist, I mean, you can't do these things on your own. I'll try to link to an episode I recorded with somebody who kind of took us through that process of how to reach out and like what being your own publicist looks like.
Yeah. And you're 100% right. You can totally do it yourself. I think it's harder because they get pitched from all these publicists and people anyways all day long. And I think, it's kind of like cutting through that noise. But if you can, once you get a relationship with, say, a journalist at your local paper, then all of a sudden they'll come back to you. I just did an interview from the Chicago Tribune with somebody who 3 years ago did an interview. And then he just called me out of the blue. He's working on a story and he said, hey, I wanted to pick your brain about this or that. So yeah, once you get in, you're in, but it definitely is a lot of work. Like you said, after a 12-hour day, you got to get to your emails, pound phone calls, leave messages, it's like cold calling, but it's definitely doable for sure.
Awesome. Okay. So you mentioned, how long did it take you to go from one location to 2 locations?
So that was it was about 11 months.
Okay.
So it took us, it took us some time, but I started working on it 3 months prior to that. So, I would say like 8 months in, we started working on location 2.
Okay. And do you think you would have expanded this quickly if you didn't have a partner that was kind of putting the pressure on you that they had the real estate available and they wanted to move you in?
Well, one thing that I do believe is that restaurants have a very quick ceiling as far as growth opportunities. Once you have your GM in place, you have your shift managers, you have your trainers, your crew. I mean, there's only so many spots for people to move up inside the company. And so I think it's really important. Like for me, when I was working for a company, I wanted opportunity to grow. I wanted like something to hope for and to work towards, and I think that's really important in everyone's life. So I knew that we need to grow the company to have opportunity to grow our people, and myself included, me too. There's a salary cap. There's a cap for me. There's a cap for everyone at one restaurant. At 2, that expands. From 3, 4 to 15 to 100. The more you can grow your company, the more you can give opportunity for your people to grow and things for them to hope for and to work towards. So I definitely think that was our path. But to answer your question, to be able to do it in 8 months, there's no way. There's just no way. I mean, it would have been a lot harder to pull that off,
If not for what?
Like I would say definitely the startup capital. So that was one of the things. I mean, we are, because of the Publicist and because of the media reach, our first restaurant, we paid off everything, all our startup capital in 6.5 months, 7 months.
Awesome.
So we were debt free and profitable.
How big was that nugget, that debt?
So it wasn't that much. We started the first restaurant with $63,000. We borrowed, it's like nothing, right? We borrowed $20,000 and to lease our equipment or to like loan equipment, and then basically we just used startup cash. Cash flow in the business to pay for other things, and we're still doing it. Kind of going back to always be improving. Like since this pandemic and our dining rooms closed, we just remodeled our bathrooms. That was something I always wanted to do because the bathrooms were not the best. And, so like even almost 3 years later, we're still using our cash flow to do things that maybe we would have done if we had an unlimited budget when we started,
So after you 6 months to pay off that debt, and then from that, at that point, you started using cash flow to determine your growth, or did you have?
Well, no, that's what I was saying is the benefit of having our real estate investor is because like we wouldn't have had cash flow, like we were profitable, but it would have taken another 6 months or more to save money to open up that second store. So we didn't have to rely on our profits from our first location to open up location number 2, because we had our investor, put up those startup costs that helped us open up, location number 2.
So what were your biggest challenges going from 1 to 2 locations?
So I think, one initial challenge was that I wasn't going to be at our original location anymore. So I had to, during one of our meetings, I sat down and told everybody, like, listen, we're growing the company, but you're not going to see me here anymore. Like you can't rely on me to be doing shifts. If someone calls off, like, you can't, I can't only be in one place at a time. So I think I was working a lot of shifts, managing shifts, even cashier shifts, dishwashing shifts, somebody called in. So I think that was a transition, is not relying on me as a person to work in the restaurant. So that was our first challenge. And I still was filling in shifts and whatnot. And I still do. It's just the more so, I had to transition from working in the restaurant to working on the restaurant.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what that second location forced me to do.
What was the most difficult aspect of that transition for you?
I think kind of just prioritizing my tasks. Like one day I was sitting there and I filled in for a shift and I was filling up sauces, right? We had 2-ounce sauce containers. I'm filling up ranch and honey mustard and barbecue. And I'm just sitting there doing it. And it took me about an hour. And the whole time I was just thinking in my head, like, this is a waste of my time. Not that it didn't need to get done, but like anyone could be filling up sauces. The knowledge that I had and the work that I was doing, like, was more important than me sitting there filling up sauces. So I had to push myself to like not do that, and then, it's hard when you're sitting in the office, knocking out paperwork and doing bills and stuff, and the phone's ringing in the office. I would pick up every time, hey, Fry The Coop, how can I help you? What can I get you? And then I'd have to write down their order, run to the cashier. Hey, here's an order that just came in, a phone order. Here you go. Go sit back down. Now, when I sit down at the desk, I don't pick up the phone. I mean, I want to. To me, I love giving people great customer service. Even pick up the phone. I love joking with people, laughing with them, making them smile, even over the phone, taking an order. But you have to have self-restraint, because I know that the work I'm doing growing the company is more important than me answering the phone to take this phone order. And like, yeah, maybe we missed the order. Maybe our cashier's too busy and these guys are too busy running around because it's lunch rush and no one picked up the phone. So we just lost out on, $25 in, revenue. But what's more important, taking that phone call or knocking out the task at hand to grow the company?
So managing yourself was your biggest challenge from going from 1 to 2 locations, making sure you had the discipline to do the things that only you could do and to unplug from the day-to-day was your biggest challenge. What else was your challenge?
I think, well, at this location specifically, I mean, hiring was a bit of a challenge, because our other store is in, not a poor neighborhood, but it's definitely a more working class neighborhood.
Store number 2.
Store number 1 is in more of a working class neighborhood. Store number 2 is in a very wealthy neighborhood. So the high school kids, they don't need to work. Like we have high school kids at our Oak Lawn store that they work and they give their checks to their parents to help them pay rent. I mean, it's that serious.
Yeah.
Where, at our second store, it's a pretty well-off neighborhood, and, these kids live in big houses. We put out a job description, we put out a job post in our first store, we get 60 applications. We put out a job post at our second store, we get 3.
Yeah.
So I think that was a little bit of a challenge, is like filling in and getting as many people, there.
Overcome that challenge.
What'd you say?
How did you overcome that challenge of recruiting people, the low wage position in a high scale community or high class community?
Well, we got creative. So we reached out to all the high schools and worked with all their career counselors. We reached out to all the local colleges with their same kind of thing, career counselors, get job posts.
What did that conversation look like?
No, they're actually really into helping. So you call the local high school, wherever you at, and just say, hey, I want to talk to somebody in career counseling, and they'll connect you. And then they're more than happy to put a job post on their board. They put it on the school website. They have students, we started reaching out to actually teachers themselves. So I would reach out to a teacher and say, hey, you got any students that you just love that, are hardworking and you could see really kicking butt? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, hey, could you mention we're hiring, And they would actually kind of recruit for us. I get calls from these teachers like, hey, I got 3 awesome students I'm sending your way, and that really helps.
And I think I cut you short. So you reached out to the college, you reached out to the high school, and you were going to continue to go on who you reached out to. Who else did you reach out to?
Originally we were just using Craigslist. So we started paying a little more money for Indeed, and kind of really like targeting our posts and stuff. I was also going around, like I would go get lunch at other places and I would just hand my card. Like if I got good customer service, I would literally hand over my card, be like, hey, if you're unhappy here, we're hiring down the street, So I would literally try to recruit people like personally, just I remember I chased a girl down, Chipotle. I saw her did an interview in Chipotle and it was weird. She's running out, she's walking to her car and I happen to be leaving at the same time. And I just said, hey, excuse me. And she looked at me really weird, like, what? Like, were you just interviewing in there? She's like, yeah. I'm like, well, hey, we're also hiring, right down the street over here. Here's my card, if you're interested.
Nice.
So I think just getting creative. Yeah.
After it, yeah. What else were your biggest challenges from that transition from 1 to 2? Recruiting people in a high scale or I keep on saying high scale. That's not the right high class community. What else?
So one thing we did too is one of our prep cooks, great guy. He just was a terrible prep cook. I mean, he was a little slow, bigger guy. His back started hurting him a lot, and great attitude, but just not good at prep. So we decided that we're going to let him go. And we did it in a kind of a nice way, like, hey, you're not really working on a prep. We're going to keep you on, but you should probably start looking for other jobs, and that was kind of the conversation. We told him we'll give him like a month or more, to kind of find a new job. We didn't want to leave him high strung because he was a great guy, showed up to work. He just wasn't good at that position. I guess this is a great example of someone who's not the right person on the bus, but wrong seat on the bus.
Yeah.
And so our director of operations, he said, hey, what about if we had him start doing some recruiting and started doing some admin work and kind of helping us like office style. And I thought, oh man, that's probably not going to work out, but sure, we'll give him a shot. And today he is now our HR, he's our HR administrator and he's an admin and he's kind of also kind of transitioning into our IT guy. And he is just crushing it. He does payroll now, 100%. He recruits. So he's on the phone, he's pounding the phone, calling people. We're always hiring. I mean, we're always interviewing. And if there's a great person, we'll bring him on. So he is every day he's making recruiting calls. He does employee reviews. I mean, he is just crushing it, literally crushing it. So I think that was a huge thing too, because I realized after we had 2 locations up and running, like, hey, I don't have time to be recruiting anymore. I don't have time to sit down and do interviews. And, even though I love that part of it and I'm good at it, I didn't have the time to be so focused on it because it takes following up. You get a candidate, you call them, say they're in school or something, they don't pick up the phone. Then you have to follow up, you have to call them again. Then you have to have a phone interview. Then a phone interview, you have to schedule a face-to-face interview. They come in, someone's got to do a face-to-face. Maybe they have a second face-to-face interview. Then you got to bring them on. It's literally a lot of work. The HR recruiting side of it is a ton of work. So
you guys that recruiting in-house, or are you using any third-party resources or tools to manage that HR arm?
No, we do it. We just do it in-house. It's too expensive to. What'd you say?
Do you have a background in HR?
I do, yeah. I worked for a IT staffing company for a couple of years. So I went, I used to recruit and I used to look at resumes over and over and over again. But these are different positions too. It's not like you're hiring like an IT professional who has like a certain skill set and, who maybe has different training or certificates in like a different like technology or different skill set. I mean, we're hiring green, kids who have never worked before, college kids, we're looking for people who it's either their first or second job, who has a great attitude. So it's a different kind of recruiting, and also they're hourly workers, just starting out. So it's not like, they're like big salary, people that we're bringing on the team.
Gotcha. So, what were have we gotten to any of the other big challenges? I mean, we covered a lot as far as trying to find the right people. We got into a lot of detail on how you found those people. You found somebody who wasn't great in one role and you recruited them to manage the HR portion of your business. What else? Like how long did it take you to go from 2 to 3?
So then our third location, we started working on our third location in we signed the lease in December of 2018. So basically now
months after the second location.
Yes. Yeah. But that was a bigger project, and that ended up turning into our fourth location because it took almost a year to do the build out there, and we ran into a lot of problems. So in the summer of 2019, we went to a food hall to visit one of our friends, check out their new spot. And we ended up talking with the manager at the food hall. And he's like, hey, I heard about you guys. Are you interested in maybe, opening up in the city? And we were like, yeah, we'd be interested. And before I know it, I was on the phone the next day with them, like, hey, we need to have a meeting. There's something urgent. I can't, disclose it, but, can you come like tomorrow to meet with us, my boss? So, all of a sudden, 2 days later, I'm sitting down in a meeting and I found out that one of their vendors was basically throwing in the towel because they weren't making enough money, and they wanted to replace them with us. So it kind of came out of nowhere. It was a great opportunity where they courted us, and so they kind of threw up the startup cash for this. And no joke, within that meeting, we went into 2 weeks later to negotiating the lease. And negotiating a lease when you get attorneys involved, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. So they wanted us to open up 2 weeks later. The general manager did, and I told him, I said, listen, I know we don't have a lease signed, but if we're going to open up in 2 weeks, like we need to get all the equipment ordered right now, and I need to start making arrangements to get us open by this date. And they said. He said, all right, fine. We shook on it. This was before a lease was signed. The Friday, we opened up on a Monday, but the Friday before, that was the last day of the old vendor. And this was in June of 2019, the last summer. Literally, what'd you say?
5 days after the old vendor was out.
Yeah, not even 3 days. So Friday at 4 p.m., the vendor closed their stuff, rolled their equipment out of there, took their signs down. I was standing there at 4 o'clock waiting for them to leave, which was awkward. They left, and I stayed there till 1 a.m. that day, getting the booth ready. Came back at 7 a.m. the next morning, stayed there from 7 a.m. till midnight on the Saturday. Sunday, same thing, came back. By Monday, we were open up. So from Friday to Monday. But that was a situation where it was just a 200 square foot booth. It's in a food hall, so they already had the hood there. It was already set up. We just really needed to roll our equipment in there, get our inventory, get our food set up, get our, POS in line. Within 3 days, within a month, basically, of the initial conversation, we were opened up. That location it came out of nowhere. It was just kind of a blessing.
And I think that's another benefit to doing one thing really well. This is something that comes up on the show over and over again. It's kind of funny because I see more and more people, like, especially with COVID-19, everyone's like, oh, like the solution to this is to narrow down your menu and just focus on a few things really well, and make those your staples, and that will keep you afloat until blah, 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 blah. But I feel like all the stuff that like we've been talking about for the past, like at least 5 years of just these trends of like, okay, like doing one thing really well. It allows you to scale faster, allows you to put all that energy into doing that one thing really well. And it also makes taking opportunities like this, and it makes taking those opportunities easier, because all you have to do is, I feel like to get a small space like this available, like you're not cutting your menu down, right? Because it's already cut down. So you can just move in real quick, and you don't need a lot of equipment because you're only doing a few things, right? Talk about how like this doing a few things really well creates opportunity, because I never even saw it as a way to allow you to take more opportunity faster.
Oh, you're 100% right. And I lived in California for 5 years, and that was one thing I noticed in California just while I was prepping to open up a restaurant, is I saw these places that were doing one thing really well, just really exceeding at that. And In-N-Out Burger was a huge influence to me, where if you look at their menu, it's, cheeseburger, double cheeseburger, fries, and a shake. I mean, it's got 4 items on the whole menu. And I've never seen an In-N-Out without a line at the drive-thru.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
we mentioned you do fried chicken, specifically Nashville fried chicken sandwiches is your niche. What's on your menu?
Our menu is a little similar. We have 4 sandwiches. We have tender plate. We have a kid's tender plate, which is basically the same thing, just smaller. And then we have chicken and waffles. And then we have a couple sides, fries, seasoned fries, mac and cheese, potato salad. I mean, it's really, really simple. And that, to me, is a huge advantage, kind of like what you were talking about, because we need less equipment. We need less space in the kitchen. Our inventory is really low. We only have 3 key items that we really order, which is, chicken breast, chicken tenders, and potatoes for our fresh cut fries. I mean, it's really, really simple. And that is like totally on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of the old school thinking was to make it as complex as possible so no one can copy you. But times have changed, the internet's around. So if someone wants to copy you, guess what? They're going to copy you. There's nothing you can do about it. They can figure it out, So I think doing what you do really, really well and nailing that's something that's harder to copy, in my opinion. And so, like, even our training, for our sandwiches are mainly the same. There's just slight variations. I can train you on our line on sandwiches in less than 10 minutes, so we can bring you on and you can be working a shift and do great at it and within an hour, where I remember one of our mutual friends, Oscar, he had a very complex, Mexican restaurant in Texas. And, he was saying it took him 2 months to train line cooks to, nail their recipes, because it's complicated, right?
And sometimes you have people working for you for like 6 months to a year. So like a big chunk of their existence in your restaurant is just getting to the point where they don't completely suck.
Yeah, exactly. No, totally. And I think that's we intentionally try to make things really simple, and we're continuing to, like, how can we make it even more simple? Like, keep it simple, stupid is, like, something we live by, and we try to inject even more into the business. Like, how can we, okay, this is complicated. How can we cut all these steps in half, and we're constantly doing that until literally, like, it's a smooth, easy, simple thing to do.
What are some of the benefits of being in a food hall versus having your own brick and mortar? Get into that real quick. Operationally, how you've had to adjust for that type of that specific type of operation.
Food halls are an amazing opportunity. For one, our startup costs were next to nothing going into the food hall, so I think that was a huge advantage. There's already a audience of people that go to the food halls. So if you get into a food hall, there's a huge audience already built in. People are already coming. So I think you can take advantage of that and get a lot more people. For us, this food hall is right in the downtown loop of Chicago. So right in literally the smack dab middle of the loop. What's nice is a lot of people who work in the loop all come from the suburbs, or they come from all around the Chicagoland area. So these folks take trains, they, take buses, and they go into the loop for work. But then they get to try your brand there at the food hall, and then they go back to their neighborhoods and they're telling people about you, they're talking about you, so I think there's a marketing aspect where you're kind of having a chance to get in front of a lot more people than you normally wouldn't if you're saying just like a neighborhood, you know, that only people who go to that neighborhood know about you, opposed to being in a place like that where, you know, now everyone in the whole Chicagoland area get to know us, you know. So that's pretty cool. The other thing about the food hall is that, I mean, for ours specifically, it was super easy to schedule because this is just a lunch food hall. So we had 4 people working there Monday through Friday. They get nights and weekends off. You don't need to schedule it. There's no scheduling because everyone knows their shifts. So they just come and work it. And I would say from an operations standpoint, it's a lot easier because you don't have a lot of people calling off, you know. So that was a huge advantage for us too. And what else? And the marketing too from the food hall itself. So, and like the PR that comes from it, you're included in that. So like, you know, they're doing their own marketing efforts, and now you're being exposed to their audience. So people who maybe never heard of you before, you know, they're now marketing for you, kind of thing.
This was your 3rd location. You originally tried to open another brick and mortar standalone, but ran into complications with that, but eventually got it open. What were those complications?
So we hired the wrong contractor. So that was initially we bid it out to 3 people because it was a former restaurant. It was actually a Michelin-starred restaurant. And we had to flip it around from this fine dining concept to basically like a Nashville hot chicken dive bar, you know? So it wasn't that the contractor that we hired, that we chose, didn't do good work. His work was decent. It was good in some aspects, but he just dragged the process out. And, you know, our initial deposit was $35,000 to start the work. And after about 2 months, I had walked through with another contractor, a friend of mine, and I said, hey, you know, this guy's not showing up. Nothing's being done. You know, can you help me, you know, go through everything he did so far? So I walked through and I said, okay, he did that and he did this and he took down that and this, that. And he goes, my friend told me, listen, there's been about maybe 2 days of work done in here total. And I would say it's less than $10,000 in work. So, you know, he said maybe it's about $7,500 worth of work that's been done, and it would have taken our crew 2 days to do that. And it had been 2 months. 2 months had passed. So instead, what I should have done is I should have fired this contractor that moment and said, hey, you're not living up to your promise. You're taking too long. We need to get this place open. Like, you're fired, and I want $25,000 back. You know, but that was the biggest check I ever wrote in my life. So
I mean, you're in a contract with this person, right? Did the contract give you that ability just to fire them on the spot like that and to refund you?
Yeah, totally. We probably wouldn't have got our money back, but I would have chalked that up as a better loss and hired someone else to finish the job instead of, you know, dragging it out where his work didn't finish until we started February 15th, and he never finished. 2019, we started February 15th was the actual day we started, where I handed over that initial deposit check, and he didn't finish until September 15th, and he actually never finished. So we had eventually ended up having to have a contractor come in, and we spent about $15,000 over what we had paid him to have contractors finish. And so that was a big lesson for me. And I screwed up too. I should have had him like give me his, like, I asked him if he had his license. He never had his license. I'm almost positive. So I should have, you know, in Chicago to get your contracting license, it's kind of a big deal within the city. It takes 6 months to do it. And so he told me he had it, and I just believed him when I should have had him made proof of that. I should have had him list this on his insurance. And I should have made proof of that. When the permits, like we had permits that were being done, he never filed any permits. So eventually we had to file permits after the fact. And so that was another thing, like I should have demanded to see the permits and actually see them like posted. So it was a big learning experience for me, and I chalked it up as like, hey, I learned a lot. But really, I would say our contractor who we chose really shit the bed on that
Are you
one.
sticking with the same contractor now that with the contractor that you replaced this guy with? Is he doing your other build outs, or are you?
No, and we kind of piecemealed it too. So, but we have someone who we're working with for our other ones. What'd you say?
You piecemealed it?
Yeah, I think basically I hired my own electrician. I hired my own, wood guy. I hired a guy to come in and do, I acted as the GM of it, basically.
Gotcha. General contractor.
General contractor, thank you.
So, okay, now we're at 4 locations, which is where you're at today. And that was, when did you have the 4th location buttoned up again? Remind me, September 2019?
Yeah, we opened November 22nd of 2019.
7 months ago. And now you have
two
new locations going. Reflecting at your culture 3 years ago, was it 2.5 years ago? Sorry. And when you guys were, when you got to the place that you felt like it was on par with your identity, and what you're trying to do, and you're in the process of scaling now, you're being divided into 4 different locations. How have you been able to scale that culture? You mentioned, and I feel like you've been scaling kind of quickly. 4 locations in 2.5 years is kind of aggressive, right? What are you doing to maintain that culture? And is the culture, in your opinion, the same as it was back when you started?
So, kind of going back to what I said a little bit, where every location has its own culture, and that's very true. So we had to look, within each location and kind of deal with molding that culture to get it to be, something we think would be great. So at our second location, we had found out that gossip was a real big problem. Everybody was gossiping about this and that. And I never thought it was even a big deal. I've heard people on your show talk about gossip.
Gossip, it's like with the housewives.
Oh, it's terrible, literally. I mean, really, and it crushes a culture.
Yeah.
Gossip will kill you, literally. So we had an all hands on staff meeting, and we had to tell everybody, like, listen, like, we will not accept gossip anymore. Like, this is, when you come to work, you should feel safe. So that's, you should feel safe from violence, from harassment, and gossip. And gossip was almost taking over our location, our second location. So we had to tell them, like,
things that people are gossiping about.
I think it's like, when you hear, oh, this person did that, or this person, her grandma passed away, so she had to go to Alabama or Arkansas or something to, go to the funeral. But then they posted a video of Snapchat, and they were on, kayaks on a lake, during that trip. But like, I'm sure she had other family. I'm sure she was down there for it. But then all of a sudden, everyone in the restaurant's like, oh, she lied and she's full of it. And, she's out there having fun and her grandma probably didn't even die, stuff like that, where they're just like talking smack about one another when they're not there. And it could be as little as, maybe 2 people in the restaurant hooked up, and now everyone's talking about it, and it's like making things awkward. And we just, and they don't even know if it's true or not. That's the problem. So I think, we just literally told everybody, we are not tolerating gossip anymore. And if you are caught gossiping about somebody else, like, you're not welcome here anymore. So we really had to put our foot down at that location because gossip was taking over our culture.
So
how do
you squash gossip? You just put your foot down and create a zero tolerance policy?
Yeah, and I think you have to follow up on it. It's not like you can just, have a meeting and then everything's like magically perfect again. You have to find out certain things, and if somebody's talking about somebody, you have to pull them to the side and say, hey, what are you doing? What happened, and why are you telling people about that? Like, that's none of your business. And I think just really letting people know that you're not going to tolerate it. And then when a situation does happen, you pull them out and you talk to them, and you don't accept it. And if you have to, you fire people, you let people go. And that was a situation where we did have somebody in the restaurant. It was a manager, And here, this was a big learning lesson for us too. So this manager was always on time, was a super hard worker, was trustworthy, and was just like literally a most ideal badass employee, except for the fact that they gossiped like crazy and they made it uncomfortable for everyone else. And so, we kept saying, giving this person second chances, third chances. And it was just we realized like, hey, we can't tolerate this anymore. So we had to let him go. And that was, I use that now as a great example for us, is that we have to be really good at firing people and letting people go, even as harsh as that sounds, because I think the success of our business is hinging on the fact that we fire people before they get to corrupt our culture.
There's a saying, hire slow, fire fast, right? And you got to keep that standard high. And I mean, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. You really got to keep that bar high. As soon as you start lowering that bar, over time, that bar gets a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower.
100%.
Before you know it, you're like the frog in hot water, that just boiled itself to death and didn't even realize it.
Yep. No, you're nailing the head. And I think like firing people is also a blessing for them too, because if they're working at a company and they're not doing a good job or they're a bad culture fit, they're not doing themselves a service and the company's not doing a service to them. And yeah, it's not fun to be fired, or it's not fun to fire people, but that may force them out of their comfort zone, and that may push them to do something else or to go to another company, and they might find a better fit for themselves. Like they don't know what's around that corner because you can't see it, and it might be hard to go through that transition, but once you do make it on the other side, I really think there's a reason for everything. And if someone's not a good fit at your company and you know it right away, fire them and move on, because you got to surround yourself with great people. And if you start hiring bad people and, people who are in gossip or are just going to bring your culture down, that's going to pull everyone down, so you want to surround yourself with great people. And you'll never know that from interviews. I don't care. You can interview somebody, and we interviewed a manager 4 times. I even had my mom interview him. This was going to be a big role in the company. No joke. I put him on the phone with my mom for an hour, and everyone gave a thumbs up. And 3 months later, we found out that the person was a piece of shit, basically. And so, you don't really see someone's true colors until you actually work with them and get in the dirt with them. And so I think it's really important to, let people go.
So anything else we haven't discussed up to this point? We talked I don't know if we really rounded out the culture question though, because I asked you, is your culture as strong today as it was when you were in that one location you were present? And you said that, there's little micro cultures, micro communities developing within each location. Am I putting you on the spot right now?
No. And I think culture is always changing. And like one thing that I actually have this book here with me, Culture for Dummies,
by
Mr. Mike Ganino.
Yeah.
But basically, do you have it too? You got it on the shelf over there?
I lent it out to somebody, which is a very good chance. Wait.
Oh, I think I see it.
Yeah. I'll fucking.
All right.
Cheers, dude.
Shout out to Mike.
Let's do a book cheers.
Cheers.
There you go.
But honestly, I think, and Mike's the one who brought this up, is that, depending on the people that are in your restaurant or in your company, that is really the culture. It's how everyone interacts with each other. So one bad seed can really, throw that off. So each restaurant is evolving, and we're always hiring, and there's people that are leaving. We have turnover like everybody else. But I think when you have that key group of people that are really hardworking, they work well together, they have fun together, they go out and hang out afterwards together. I mean, to me, that makes a great culture. And sometimes you bring people in who, disrupt that, and so I think for each of our stores, the culture is always changing based on who's in the company and who's not at that location. So I think it's something that is always changing. So it's not like I can say like, okay, we reached our goals, our culture is great. because it's something that you're constantly working on, and you're constantly, picking apart and trying to manipulate and mold and help. And so I don't think any company can say that, oh, our culture is perfect, because it never will be. You're always working at it. So I think that each store has its own culture, depending on who's in there at the time and how we can influence it. But they're all still today, they're all different.
Yeah.
I mean, all 4 of our places are different.
So one of the things that comes up often on the show, as far as when it's time to scale, is when you have people within the 4 walls of the current buildings you have that have run out of opportunity, right? Where you have all the roles filled, all the leadership roles filled, and now there's people below those leadership roles that are totally qualified and could easily step into those leadership roles, but the people that are occupying those roles aren't going anywhere because they're happy with their job, right? And then you're like, well, how do I create opportunity for these people who can clearly grow beyond the roles they're in? Are you at that place with all of your 4 locations right now?
100%. I mean, we're trying our best to grow the company. I mean, we're opening 2 locations right now simultaneously. And we're constantly trying to grow the company to create opportunities for everybody. I wouldn't say that, everybody who is like hourly employees, it's not like we have like a line of leaders waiting to, get to management. But there's definitely, a select few that are these rock stars that like, hey, this guy definitely can be, great at management.
Yeah.
But sometimes, it's not, just because someone's great at their job doesn't mean that they're going to be a good manager, and we just had this guy, he was a shift manager at a store for about 3 months, and he decided, you know what, I don't want to be a shift manager. I just want to come to work and do my job right now. And he wanted to go back to school. So we said, no problem. So now he's back to just kind of doing his thing on the line, So I think we're always looking for leaders, and we're trying to challenge ourselves to, grow leaders, especially with our managers now. Like, we set up some systems where they can anonymously write somebody up through our HR department, and we can, write someone up. We can talk with them. What'd you say?
What system is that?
So I don't even know. We don't really have a name for it. It's basically, we want our managers to write up people when they're not doing what they're supposed to, right? If someone's coming late every day, the manager should pull them to the side and say, hey, you need to be on time. What can we do to help you to be on time? Or if they dress sloppy, or if they're not communicating on the line or something like that, But sometimes it's hard for a manager, because our managers work in the restaurant. They're on the line, they're out in the dining room, they're running around, to scold somebody and to have a hard conversation with somebody, and then 10 minutes later they're back on the line working with them. So we created this opportunity for a manager to write somebody up. They could submit the write up to our HR department, which is now 2 people, and then that HR person can reach out to that person and say, hey, you're written up by the management team, so they're not calling anyone's name out. It's anonymous, and they're saying, hey, we're writing you up because you're late every day. But the reason you're being written up is because we want you to be better. We want you to be on time, and is there ways we can help you get better? But that kind of deters our managers from becoming leaders themselves, because then they're just passing the baton, over to somebody else. Like, hey, I don't want to really deal with this. You deal with it, So we created that system to help people if they felt uncomfortable writing somebody up and having those hard conversations. But we kind of need to make them better leaders so they can grow and have those hard conversations. So we're kind of shifting that a little bit now, where we're pushing them to.
Where you encouraged your your employees, like your entry level employees, your baseline employees, to report anonymously to your mid-level managers. So that, have you thought about scaling it down so you're empowering your people to kind of take on that it's my company too Tom Walter philosophy?
Yeah, absolutely. And we kind of have that process set up, but it was more centered around like sexual harassment and things like that, like kind of harassment styles. But I like that Starbucks also has a thing where they call training up and training down. where a, you know, frontline employee can actually train a manager and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I do really like that. We don't have a system in place for that yet, but I really like that.
If you guys are interested in what we're talking about right now, check out Tom Walter, past guest on the show, his book, It's My Company Too, which is all about creating an entangled organization where you don't know who's the manager because you've empowered everybody to call everybody else out. Because you know the standards, you know the culture, you know the values. So if you see anybody out of line, regardless of who you are in the hierarchy, you have the empowerment to make it right. It's a really powerful school of thought. Did I cut you short?
No, I was just going to say, yeah, Tom's a great guy, great leader. He's here in Chicago, has a great company, and that book is awesome.
Yeah. And another resource for you guys, if you want to, there's systems that already exist that you can plug into your business today that allow you to do anonymous reporting. And I think there's free versions of it. Head to the show notes and look for Ethics, the link to Ethics Suite. Juliet Gus, past guest on the show, another really great tool. Again, that's Ethics Suite, where you can use that framework to do anonymous reporting within your business. Really great school of thought there. All right, so we're gonna start thinking about wrapping up this conversation, Joe. Time goes by so fast with you, dude. I've been loving it, but I want to, before we go into talking a little bit about COVID, how you have adapted and what you think the future and how you're existing right now, because I want to try to pull a little bit of nuggets around that topic in every interview. Anything you have not gotten out on the table regarding your 4 businesses or your 4 locations now and Fry the Coop.
Yeah, so, you know, originally there's the book, what is it called? Why am I losing my train of thought? The book is about not working in your business, working on your business.
Oh, the E-Myth. Sorry.
E-Myth. Thank you very much. Yeah. So E-Myth was a book that I read before we started the company. And I always knew that was, you know, a goal of mine, is to get to working on the business and not so much in it. And, you know, like we've been talking about in this conversation, going from multiple locations, you know, from one to multiple has really pushed me to do that. And I'm at that stage now. But there is the author of Profit First, Mike Michalowicz. He wrote a book recently called Clockwork. And Clockwork was basically like it's like E-Myth is a precursor to Clockwork. And essentially, like what I'm doing now is I'm trying to delegate everything that I do in the business to other people. So we just hired a full-time HR person. You know, we have our director of operations, but we hired an assistant director of operations. Soon enough, we're going to be hiring a controller for our accounting. But I am now getting to the point where, you know, I want to move from working onto the business to the Clockwork standpoint, where like I'm almost making myself obsolete, where all my tasks, everything I do in the company is going to be handled by somebody else.
Yeah.
So I like my favorite thing to do in the restaurant is to walk around, wipe tables, and talk to customers in the back room. That is like literally my favorite thing to do. And I literally get to do that 0% of the time now. You know, my job has changed every 6 months, basically. But I want to get back to the point where I have nothing to do, so I can just go into the restaurants and talk to guests and wipe tables. And
probably the most powerful thing you can do. Honestly, it's all about those relationships.
Seriously, no, and I love doing that.
It's being able to have a presence in all of your restaurants, maybe not every day, but at least every week you can touch each restaurant and check in with your people and the customers at those places. I mean, that's so powerful. Awesome stuff.
So,
do you want to round?
Yeah, so I just wanted to, I'm just rounding it out that, you know, I think, and I want to challenge everybody who's listening to this, who has a company, is to, you know, in the book Clockwork, it challenges you to take off for 1 full month. So not this year, next year, my goal is to take off for 4 weeks straight and not get one phone call from your business. So I'm in the process of doing that now, where I'm delegating everything I do to get to the point where our company runs like clockwork, essentially. And then I can either maybe start another business, or I can be in the dining room having fun. You know, like I'm quote unquote CEO of our company right now, but one day there will be somebody who takes over my shoes. And I think that's the true American dream, is to where, like right now, my company owns me. I want to eventually own my company one day.
But I mean, I think that's kind of to get to that mentality. If your business requires you to be in it, then really at the end of the day, like you don't really have like it's an asset, but like if you can remove yourself from it, it makes you got to think of like that. You need to be able to create an exit strategy for yourself, right? And if you can replace yourself in all the elements of your business, so you're detaching yourself from it, even though you want to be in it, right? I'm not saying you go sit on a fucking beach. I'm saying like
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
you don't make yourself like a linchpin. Like the business doesn't necessarily need you. Now you have a greater asset because you can. It's turnkey. You can hand it off to somebody else if you ever, for whatever reason, your values change, your vision change, you get sick of it, you can walk away from it. You can sell it, right? You're creating an exit strategy for yourself. So you need to be able to remove yourself as much as possible. But I'm not saying don't be in your businesses. I'm just saying don't make it dependent on you. Is kind of
exactly
awesome stuff, man. So COVID-19. Real quick, I don't want you to get into the details of how you reacted and how you responded and what things you chose to do, because I think the ship has kind of sailed on that idea of like what you can do right now to be relevant, because we're starting to
sure.
climb out of it. But what did you do? How did you react in that moment? Like 1 minute, real quick.
So we pivoted really quickly. We had about 400 people walk through our door one day after we closed the dining room and we were just to go. And our staff was legitimately scared. They were like, hey, too many people are coming in and out. So we had to make the tough decision to close the building completely, not let any customers into our building at all. And so I had an idea I got from a friend, and we turned our front doors into a takeout window.
Yeah.
I called the contractor. He said, wait, what do you want to do? You want to take your door out and make it a takeout window? He's like, sure, I'll be there in an hour. Next day, literally replaced our front doors at our restaurants and created this temporary takeout window, painted it black. It looks great. We set up canopies. We put up huge signs that say takeout window with arrows. We put lights up, cones. We have buckets that like have people distancing 6 feet apart. Because, a little bit of the story brand, if you confuse, you lose. So I was terrified that people were going to walk up to our restaurant. They were going to be like, are these guys open? Are they closed? What's going on here? I wanted to take out all that confusion. So when you pull in the parking lot, you see our takeout window signs everywhere. You see the canopy. I mean, it's almost like this huge overview of, hey, we are open and we have this takeout window. And now it's been huge. And since the pandemic, since that pivot, we've had 3 record days so far inside that, which has been incredible.
All time or since the pandemic started?
We had record days since we've opened our company. So at each location, one of our locations is closed right now, it's in the loop, but the 3 locations that are open, they are literally, we had a record day at each one so far in this pandemic.
And I mean, I feel like, maybe there's something we can take from this. What do you think it was that made you have record days? Is it just because most of your business to start was takeout or pickup? Or like, what was it that you think made you have these record days? Was it because you're getting out there? You were also delivering food to hospitals. Was it the hype around all that was maybe driving traffic to your restaurant?
No, I think it went into it being easy. So like I had went to a Chipotle and they weren't letting people into the building either. And I didn't know that. So when I pulled up, at first I'm like, door's locked. I'm like, are they in there? I'm like looking in the window. And then I saw that they were in there and a girl comes out and she's like, oh, you have to order online. I was like, oh, okay. So I got back in my car. I had to order online. Then I got back out of the car. There was a huge pile of people waiting. She was like slamming the door in their face as they were like, oh, order for Brian. And then she'd like hand Brian his order and then slam the door again. And it was just a horrible experience for me personally. I just thought with us, we need to eliminate any bad experience with this new pivot, So when people come up,
bad experiences in the current workforce, how are you doing that? I think you were just about to explain it. Sorry.
Yeah. So no. So essentially, every guest that walks up to the window, somebody's there immediately to address them. Hey, how you doing? Welcome. You got everything to our takeout window. You can either, are you here for a pickup? Are you here for a phone order? Or, do you need to put in an order right now? And they have handhelds so they can put in the order immediately. It just, I think the idea that I'm sorry, what?
Using Toast, right?
Yeah, we're using Toast. Yep. Toast. Then the Toast handhelds. So the Toast Go, I forget what they call them, but
Okay.
It's basically a handheld, and they're amazing. But essentially, everyone who walks up to our door, they're greeted right away. You know, they are handed a menu, or they're given their order. Or if they don't feel comfortable, hey, let me take your order real quick. How about you go sit in your car, and then I'll come bring it to you. So I think that we made it very easy, and we took all the confusion out of it, has helped people come back, you know, because to me, I haven't been back to Chipotle since I went through that bad experience, and I probably won't go until this thing's over with. But like, we took all that out. So I think our success is, you know, based on the fact that people can come in, it's easy, it's quick, they can get their great meal and food very easily without any trouble, you know, and I think that's helped them come back and come back again. Another part of that is a lot of restaurants are closed right now. So where normally we'd have a ton of competition, we have less competition. So that's been a factor in why we've had record days. And also, we're kind of this in between in the fast casual category, where we're not the Saturday night, like, you know, birthday dinner that you're going to have, you know, where you dress up fancy for, but we're also not McDonald's. So, you know, price points and quality point, we're right in the middle, you know, where you can get us on a Tuesday, you can't have it on a Saturday night. You know, it's a great quality meal, but it's not, you know, it's not fast food, but it's not fine dining either. So I think that's really helped in this whole thing.
So are you utilizing any third parties right now for like delivery, or do you think third parties have been valuable during this time? Because I know last time you were on the show, you were all about Uber Eats. Uber Eats was a great resource of marketing. You're like singing praise. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and we use the delivery partners. We use Uber Eats and DoorDash. DoorDash has gotten a lot better with their drivers in the past, I would say, 6 months. So yeah, the delivery partners are great. I mean, literally, like, you know, it's quick, it's convenient, people can get it to their door. The problem with the delivery partners, and I think everyone's starting to bring to light, is it's too expensive for the restaurant, and it's too expensive for the consumer too.
You were justifying it before that, like, you're getting all this free press, you're getting all this exposure that you wouldn't otherwise get. Do you think that's still the case? Is that still an accurate statement?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we probably sell our delivery partners right now, it's over 10% of our business, you know, maybe even closer to 15 to 20%. It's a lot right now. And the marketing part is great. You know, people, especially in the city, like, we reach a huge amount of people in the city where our location is, but we're in a neighborhood of the city, but we reach all these other neighborhoods. And so they're like sitting at home and they're like, what to eat, you know, and they come across us. They may have never heard of us before. And now they're like, oh, let's give this place a shot. And they might Google it and look it up. So I think, like, you get exposure through to a lot more people. But you know, I think, like, we're going to pay delivery partners over $300,000 this year. Jeez. That's an insane amount of money, right? So that is
salaries.
I know. And I was thinking about, man, do we you know, do an in-house delivery, you know, where we take away Uber Eats and DoorDash and we just do it ourselves? You know, would it be worth the $300,000 to do that? You know, I don't know. I just know it's not going away. And I think, if anything, especially, you know, in post-pandemic, it's going to be, a lot of people are going to be using it. Yeah. So, I mean, the post-pandemic, like, the delivery thing is not going away. A lot more people, I think, are scared, and they're going to be staying home still, even after they lift these stay-at-home bans. And I think it's going to be a big part of the restaurant business going forward. There are different ways, though, like Toast, our POS company, is now offering, they partnered with DoorDash, and they're about to offer a solution through the Toast app. Basically, just like when you're ordering online, you can pick delivery or pick up.
Basically.
Yeah, it's almost the same thing, but it's on the back end, it's run through DoorDash. It looks like it's run through us internally. But what's great about that is it's going to be about half the cost.
Okay.
So where we're going to spend 300,000, we may spend 150,000, and that's a big difference.
Yeah. Speaking of like rituals and repeating things, though, I got to look at my audience as my culture, my community, my employees in the sense, right? Because they're the people that are closest to Restaurant Unstoppable. I have to say that Toast has a great referral program. If you guys have been being pounded over the head with Toast as a great resource, please reach out to me, Eric at restaurantunstoppable.com, and let me introduce you to Toast if you're considering that as a platform, because every referral, all you got to do is connect the two of you guys. They'll pay me $500. And that really supports.
That's great.
Side note, finding sponsors is a little hard right now because everyone's getting so that's a great way to support the show. Just a little plug in there, and thank you in advance for using my links and reaching out to me. It's so helpful. If you enjoyed this video, please help us out. You can do it by liking, sharing, subscribing, and hitting that bell icon. It really helps out. And don't forget, there's a complete archive of every episode with show notes at restaurantunstoppable.com.